Hey, welcome to Naval News with Subbrief. Today we're going to start in my neck of the woods, the Great Lakes area, looking at Marinette Marine's Fincantieri shipyard that's up there. It's Fincantieri Marinette Marine is what it goes by, FMM. And they build the LCS Freedom class. They did until recently, and they've, for the past 5 years, been building the Constellation class. Now, that Constellation-class frigate was canceled on November 25th by the Secretary of the Navy after a nearly year-long review by him and his team. And I think it was a smart decision. It wasn't the only decision that they could have made to fix the program, but it certainly was the most expedient decision to cut that Gordian knot that is United States shipbuilding and to try to, reconstruct how that is done in the United States. So this 8-year program that was worth multi-billions of dollars, we'd already spent, or allocated, I should say, over $7 billion over the past 5 years to the shipyard up there. Has now ended. And we're going to quickly recap the whole process for you so you understand how this began, how we got to this point, and why it was canceled. All right. So let's start back in July of 2017. There was a formal request for information, or an RFI, generated by the U.S. Navy going out to American shipyards to construct the next generation frigate called FFGX. That is a common nameplate for the next generation ship or submarine. For instance, SSNX is next generation submarine is being developed right now, as is DDG Destroyer X, next generation destroyer. So FFGX was requested for shipbuilders to come in with design ideas, how they would build the next frigate for the U.S. Navy. And there were 4 shipyards that applied for that. It was Bath Iron Works up there in Maine, Huntington Ingalls in Virginia, Austal USA that built the Independence class for many years for the U.S. Navy down there on the Gulf Coast, and then Fincantieri Marinette Marine, who had been building the Freedom class LCS up in the Great Lakes area out of Wisconsin. And Fincantieri won that contract. So as the contract was being awarded to them, the first signs of trouble that I found was in May 2019. The Government Accountability Office makes this report saying that the U.S. Navy is still discussing how many cells in the vertical launch system should be used in the next generation frigate. So even at this point, as they're requesting ideas, design ideas from other shipyards as to how to build the next ship, they still don't know. The Navy doesn't know really what it wants at this point. And this is the core of the problem, is that the Navy really made up its mind on what it could have, what it wanted, and what it was willing to afford. Those were 3 very different ships. And by awarding this contract to FMM, Fincantieri Marinette Marine, they really put the cart before the horse. They kind of forced themselves into a corner to fund a ship that they weren't ready to decide on a design for. So that contract is awarded in April 2022 to FMM, and they get that's called the detailed design, so very specific final design and construction contract for a FREM class frigate. This is a multi-mission frigate. It's designed to operate in blue waters, conduct sea strikes, air defense, and anti-submarine warfare. That's the multi-mission aspect of it, and do those same jobs in littoral waters near shore as well. So multi-mission. The FREM has been built by the Italian Navy, which is the parent company of Fincantieri, for many years. There's lots of FREMs in the Italian Navy and in the French Navy too. This is a well-established ship, and so far appears to be a good idea to use a parent ship design to take a ship that's already tested, built, working in other navies, and just modify it for American systems. This is seems like a good idea, and is part of the lessons learned that came out of building the Zumwalt class. Now, that class, you may remember, going all the way back to the early 2000s, was the next generation destroyer of its day, and it quickly fell behind schedule, had massive cost overruns due to new technology and many other factors involved that required congressional intervention to stop that shipbuilding program after only 3 ships were started, and they finished those 3 ships, and we have those 3 destroyers, the Zumwalt-class destroyers, in our Navy today. Originally, they wanted to have dozens of those, up to as many as 30, and they never got anywhere near that number because it was stopped due to cost overruns. One of the lessons learned from that is to use a parent design, to use technology that's already tested and no new tech installed on our ships. That will come later on in later batches, later versions of the ship. Let's get the ship built first. And so the Navy decided to go with this parent design to modify a ship that already exists into the U.S. Navy. So Fincantieri says we build these ships in Italy for approximately $800,000 a piece in 2017 dollars. We can build them in Wisconsin using American labor, American shipyards at American prices for approximately 1.2 billion American dollars. A significant cost increase, but it's being built in-house. So the U.S. Navy agrees to a $1.2 billion for the lead ship, and then approximately $1 to $1.1 billion for every hull after that. For initially 2 ships that became 6, and then they were eventually going to go to 20 was the end goal across multiple shipyards. So that's where we begin with the numbers in 2020. Something that's very interesting to me that I bring up here is that the moment Fincantieri Marinette Marine, FMM, in Wisconsin was awarded the detailed design and construction contract worth billions of dollars, the parent company that's run out of Milan, Italy, Fincantieri SPA, immediately reorganizes the corporate and legal structure of the company, making it a subsidiary of Fincantieri SPA. I found this to be suspicious, so I looked into it for you. It turns out this is actually a very reasonable corporate, legal, and accounting move that makes reporting to shareholders, profit and loss, revenue streams much easier to read, and also complies with European Union law. And so in a way is kind of required, or it's just a good idea to do this type of restructuring at this time with such a large contract with the United States Navy. So there was absolutely nothing suspicious about this at all, as I thought there might be initially. My initial thought on this was, by doing this, it combines all cash flow, revenue, if you will, with the shipyard in Wisconsin with the parent company in Italy. So there's no way to account for the dollars where they are actually spent and allocated after the U.S. Navy pays the shipyard. But as a private company, that's not something that is normally accessible anyway without an investigation of some kind, and there's no reason for that. So I found this move initially suspicious, but reorganizing the company under the umbrella of the parent company as a subsidiary actually makes sense. So let's get back to shipbuilding, something I'm a lot more familiar with than accounting. The parent design for the FREM initially was going to share approximately 85% of the same ship. As you see here with the silhouettes, the blue silhouette is the original FREM that is operating in navies today and was operating for years before this program started, so it's well established. And then the white silhouette in the foreground of this picture is the Navy's idea of what they want the ship to look like. And there was about an 85% similarity there. That was going to lead to time and cost savings. Well, as the Navy added requirements like survivability, higher speeds, more generation of power requiring larger generators, and weapons, U.S. weapon systems installed versus the European weapons, and that VLS I told you about, they couldn't decide if it should be 32 or 48. They did eventually agree to make it just a 32 cell VLS in the front of that thing. In the end, there was only a 15% similarity between the original FREM design, the parent design, and this new ship. That loss in efficiency or similarity caused lots of delays and have lost a lot of the benefit of using the parent design to begin with. So in the end, using a parent design was not a good idea if you're going to make that many changes. If you're going to order a FREM, you build a FREM and put an American flag and crew on it. But that's not what the U.S. Navy wanted to do. So this experiment in a parent design for the U.S. Navy was a complete failure at this point. But it's only 2021. The Navy's refusing to accept that. They're trying to make this work going forward. They've already awarded the design, the detailed design and construction contract to the shipyard. Now they're working with the shipyard to make this idea work. The ship is longer, it's wider, it had its bow sonar removed, so it's only using towed sonar arrays and drones as its sonar system. So from an ASW point of view, that really limits or makes it less capable in terms of its ASW mission, but it's still good at surface warfare and air defense warfare. And it does have some ASW capability at this point. Now, in 2022, the PEO, the man in charge from the Navy side, is Admiral Casey Morgan, and he greenlights construction without a finalized design in this year. He testifies to Congress that it is just over 80% complete, the final design is, implying that it will soon be finished, and that the shipyard can go ahead and lay the first keel block on hull 1 and get started. And immediately they run into problems. The shipyard, as if they're surprised, says that they can't hire enough workers to begin building the ship in a rapid fashion, that they need some help with incentives. And one of the first things the Navy does is offer $50 million to the shipyard for hiring incentives for shipyard workers and white-collar workers, both management and people that are pipe fitters and welders in the shipyard themselves. So they're getting additional funds to help incentivize and train new shipyard workers there. So the cost is already not just seeing delays, but also seeing increases. And they're going to start building a ship that they don't have a complete design for, which is critical to every weld on that ship. So this is what the congressional allocation of funds looks like year over year. The first year, the first ship is always a little more expensive than the other ones for lots of different reasons, but mostly getting things rolling, getting the CNC machines built and purchased and set up. Well, there's a lot of upfront cost in any shipbuilding project. So they had about $1.2 billion the first year. Every year after that through 2023 was just over $1 billion approximately. And then in 2024, Congress decided that they're going to start funding or allocating funds for 2 ships at a time. This is a highly questionable decision because the same people who are running oversight in the Senate Armed Services Committee and the House Armed Services Committee, who are asking how they can help make this ship design more cost efficient and be built faster during their annual testimonies that happen in April that I watch, they're the same people that also go to committee behind closed doors in 2023 to authorize additional hull purchases for a ship that they know very well is not designed. They don't have a finished document, and they're already trying to fund 2 at a time. This makes no sense. Why would you, in one public hearing, say, we don't know what we can do to help, tell us, they're speaking to the Secretary of the Navy with these questions and hearings, what can we do to make this process better? And all they can do is throw more money at it. And all that is doing is ending up allocating more money that will not result in a ship being built any faster at this point. I question this decision in 2023 to fund 2 frigates at a time when they can't even get the first one really off the ground, although they did lay some metal on an assembly building, as you will see soon. Going back to Admiral Casey Morgan, his comment about the design being over 80% complete, implying that it's nearing completion. This is what the Government Accountability Office found, is that every module in this design was behind by a significant amount, the varying amounts depending on where it was, but it was nowhere near an 80%. And this is in October 2023. This is when this image was brought before those oversight hearings that I'm telling you about. So even though Admiral Morgan testified or claimed that it was over 80% complete, it clearly is not. Now, in 2024, they've laid the first keel. They're getting ready to lay the first keel block and start construction here. Delays immediately come in. And they're pointing the finger at supply chain and lack of hiring, but the real reason appears to me to be that there is no final approved design. So while the shipyard workers can begin building, say, the keel frame in only some of the areas of the ship, there's no further approved drawings to go any further than that. And the delays go from being 12 months delayed to 15 months delayed to over 36 months delayed in a 4-month window in 2024. That's how rapidly this program got pushed back the moment they talked about constructing Hull 1. So the Navy's reporting to Congress that these delays are now happening after they've decided to fund 2 ships a year. Now, in 2024, this is what the Government Accountability Office, working with the PEO, had reported during their oversight hearing. These are photos of the construction about a year ago, a little bit more than a year ago at this point, and it's not good. This is what authorization of about $6 billion at this point had brought us. We have lots of equipment, not a lot of workers, and not a lot of progress made on Hull 1. And they're also planning on laying the keel back, and by now they already have laid the keel on Hull 2. So they have 2 ships technically started, but nowhere near completion, and there's still no final design approved. So it's the workers can't go much farther than this until they know what the Navy wants. And the Navy still has not figured out how they're going to get the power generation they need with those new heavyweight generators in this little ship. The ship is overweight, even with the hull extension. It's much slower than the FREMs that are operating in the Italian Navy now because of the additional weight. And the survivability of the ship has taken a hit because of that as well. So the Navy essentially wants destroyer capability and survivability and fit it in a hull that is only designed to displace and support the weight of a frigate and the mission of a frigate, is what it appears to me. And that's why this man right here canceled that program. He, on November 25th, made a public announcement. I saw it on Twitter first before anywhere else, which is an interesting way to get the news these days, that the Navy, at the convenience of the Navy, they will no longer be accepting and funding any further hulls. So Hull 3 onward will not be finished or funded. And a lot of that money that is being reported as being spent as up to like $9 million or $9 billion was what one YouTube video had claimed. The actual allocated amount is $7 billion. Of that money, not all of that is spent. This is something that is often misreported and misunderstood, is that just because the Congress budgets and allocates that amount doesn't mean that that money is immediately spent or given to the shipyard, and it's not. So over the last 5 years, approximately, and there's a little bit of variance in this, about $500 million has been allocated to the shipyard at this point, approximately half of the total allocation. So we're not $7 billion into this program. It's about $3.6 billion right now, which is still a lot of money for 2 unfinished ships that still don't have a final design, but it's not as bad as what some other people are telling you it is. So we're into this for about $3.5 billion. It's probably going to be well over 4 before the 2 ships are finished. I don't know what the Navy's plan is going to be to finish these 2 ships and what kind of sailor is going to want to spend any part of his career on a very unique ship that he'll have to learn the systems of that won't apply probably to anybody else or any other ship he may serve on. From an enlisted man's perspective, my perspective, that's what I would look at, is like, this ship is a bit of a unique albatross, and it may not be worth your time in a career to learn it, or maybe it would be that unique that you could have that in your record as, hey, I served on the Constellation ship. You can possibly look at it that way. The Zumwalt is in a very similar instance. And I'd be interested in hearing from sailors on active duty in the U.S. Navy that served on the Zumwalt, how that affected their career, and is it a good thing for them or not? Because these 2 Constellation-class frigates, when they are eventually commissioned into the Navy, are going to be one of a kind. Very limited in terms of, capability for sure. I can't even tell you what it's going to be able to do because the Navy hasn't decided what it can do. So the big question is, what happens to the rest of that $7 billion? Right? Where does that go? That money's been allocated by Congress. Is Congress going to take that money back as savings? Are you kidding me? No, of course not. That money is likely, and here's where I'm speculating a little bit here, likely going to go to fund additional SSN construction, submarine construction. We're up to Block 5 now on the Virginia class. I believe that that money will go towards funding more of those. Our submarine construction is far behind, and we're trying to meet an obligation with our ally in Australia to get them at least 3 ships and maybe even 5 if we can build that many for them. We're also designing the next generation submarine, SSN-X. So some of that money will probably go to fund that research and development and get SSN and X started hopefully earlier than what it's originally scheduled. The District of Columbia or Columbia class, our new ballistic missile submarine, has had needed additional funding over the last 2 years to the terms of $1 billion each year on top of its already shipbuilding budget. So some of the money will likely go to that as well. The next thing is DDG-X, Next Generation Destroyer, which is what the Navy really wants. They don't want a frigate. They want a destroyer with destroyer multi-role capabilities and survivability. And they tried to get that into a frigate, and it didn't work because it doesn't fit. But they're probably going to take some of that remaining money that is not going to be spent at Fincantieri up in Wisconsin and fund the development of DDG-X, Next Generation Destroyer, and the Arleigh Burke Flight 3 that we're building right now probably is going to benefit from that money. That money will not be savings. It's not going back to pay any kind of deficit or budget. Are you kidding me? No, but it will go to fund the Next Generation Destroyer, submarine, and build more Arleigh Burkes, and I'm okay with that. So right now I'm on Team Phalen. This is the first significant decision I've seen the Secretary of Navy make in a long time, going back many Secretaries of the Navy. Usually this position is very ceremonial in appearance. And while he has done his part, going around meeting the troops, sailors, Marines, doing commissionings and playing the role of Secretary of the Navy, he's also playing a critical role in fixing American shipbuilding. Now, we still need to design a small surface combat vessel. Let's see what he does with that. And when he does, I'll bring it to you here. Thanks for watching, everybody.